So the top brass at the military are pushing to keep the vaccine mandate in place, even as Republicans are pressing the Biden administration to end the military vaccine mandate, and are also trying to use the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a must-pass piece of legislation that is currently being negotiated in Congress, to force the military to end its. We could put up A1 here to end its vaccine mandate. This is Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin saying that they believed that for military readiness, it was important that they keep the vaccine in place. What's your read on first of all, how do you think this is going to go? Do you think Republicans will succeed in getting this into the NDAA and ending the mandate?
Depends on how hard the Pentagon pushes back. This is a sign that they're at least pushing back, but it depends on, and Austin is doubling down, right? He says, I'm the guy, quote, I'm the guy who did this, and I'm sticking in it, I'm sticking with it, I'm not walking it back. But listen to that, I mean, the Army National Guard, they have projected losing up to 14,000 members for vaccine noncompliance alone. That doesn't even count how many people are just not signing up because they don't want the mandate, or they don't want to get the vaccine or be mandated to do it. And that's just the National Guard. They are missing their recruitment targets, like across the board, the military is. And the NDAA, a little like inside baseball, like congressional procedural nonsense, has become the thing that everyone is trying to basically push their pet project in right now, because it looks like they're doing a CR instead of an omnibus to fund the government by year end, which means we got to get the stuff in the NDAA. This is
at least this is military related.
I was just going to say, at least this is military related, but that's what complicates the negotiations here. As Ryan said, it's an absolute must pass. You have to pass the NDAA. And so there's all this conversation about poison pills. Ryan, do you think Democrats end up caving on this, even as LA County is right now talking about bringing back a mask mandate? We're seeing, across the country, this still uneven sense of whether the pandemic is over. I think most Americans, and if you look at polling, I think this is true as well, feel like we're on the other side of the pandemic, but that's not true of everyone. So will Democrats, who represent a lot of those people, cave on that?
I feel like this is something they would be willing to trade because Biden has said the pandemic is over. The vaccines, like usefulness for people in their 20s and 30s, and teens, which is the bulk of people in the military, is dubious. Like it's not nothing. But there are also there are also side effects that make it so that a lot of people at that age, at this point, are like, I'm not gonna get this vaccine. And when you have the combination of full employment, an absolutely raging fentanyl crisis, and mass incarceration, you're gonna have a hard time hitting your recruitment numbers if you throw on top of that this vaccine mandate for people who are like, look, like the pandemic's over. A lot of people know people who've had, either have had bad reactions to the vaccine or feel like they've had bad reactions to the vaccine, and so those people are like, and they also don't know people who are 20 who have died. Now, some people in their 20s have died.
It's not to say it hasn't happened.
It does happen, but the percentages are very clear. Like the people who are at risk are the more elderly, and also say like obese or people with other comorbidities. But if you're eligible for the military, you probably don't have as you may have one comorbidity, but you likely don't have. You probably don't have any comorbidities because of the health screening that is required to get into the military, which then takes your risk of COVID down that much more. So
that's another recruitment problem, by the way.
Right, that is that. I forgot to mention that one. Something like 50% plus of 18-year-olds are basically ineligible off the bat for the military.
Right, and then you add in, like you were just saying, fentanyl crisis, mass incarceration, and a vaccine mandate. Lindsey
and full employment.
So here's an interesting quote from Lindsey Graham that goes to, I think, whether or not, like, who's going to blink on this one. Lindsey Graham says, our recruiting goals are way short. The conflict in the world is getting worse, not better. We need more people in the military, not less. He is threatening to withhold his vote from the NDAA. So again, it's one thing to ask for it. It's another to say, listen, I'm not voting for this. Pushing it away. I'm not voting for this. Lloyd Austin then doubles down. Now it's a staring match at that point. But I think if you have Republicans pushing that hard, literally saying we cannot get people into the military right now because of one of the things NBC News cites is like cultural differences. And I've heard that too, that it's a problem when you have high-profile congressional testimony from people like Mark Milley, who say they're interested in learning about white rage, whatever you thought of that, doesn't land particularly well with some people that were interested in the military and who feel like it won't be
military's too woke for them.
Military's too woke for them because they already, don't want to deal with their HR department, let alone this sort of culture in the military. According to the Washington Examiner, as of Saturday, the text repealing the vaccine mandate is actually currently in the legislative text of the NDAA. So again,
it's in the text.
It's in the text.
Repealing it.
Yeah, repealing it. That's as of Saturday. So this is going to be a tug of war all week.
Right, and I think so. For Lloyd Austin, you don't get to be Secretary of Defense without being a deft bureaucratic infighter. And what any bureaucratic infighter knows is you don't give away something for nothing. And so if you hear that Lindsey Graham very much wants X, like it would be almost irresponsible of you to say, sure, have X.
Right.
Say, okay, you know what? No, I'm drawing a hard line on this. You want X? You got to give me Y. There are thousands of things that Austin wants.
Oh, they've got a Christmas list. Yeah, they've got a Christmas list.
So my suspicion is he will ultimately say, you know what? Fine. This means so much to you. I'll let you have that. Let me have. I have no idea what Austin wants. A base closure, a base open, an aircraft carrier to be recommissioned. Who knows?
Right.
What on earth this guy wants? It's probably related to Ukraine, related to Yemen, but I would suspect that it'll end up being part of those negotiations because it's hard. It's really hard to defend. Like I'm trying. Like even in his defense here in this article, he says 1 million people died in the United States of America. We lost hundreds in DOD. If 1 million people died in the military, okay, but like hundreds, like that's a tragedy, but it's hundreds, and so it's not millions. So even in that best argument, I think it's hard for them to say. And how many of those were vaccinated? Also, we don't. It's not that they were all unvaccinated. This is probably before, in that first deadlier wave.
Well, yeah, these are all completely legitimate questions, and I think for Austin, if Austin says, "Fine, Lindsey Graham, I'm not budging on this," and gets Democrats to take that out, really gets support and musters support among Democrats and maybe even some Republicans to keep that in place. I think it speaks to how out of touch the top brass over at the military is with the people they're trying to recruit, because you're asking them to, quote, follow the science, trust the science, that legitimately has shifted in front of their eyes, and that they see contrast between what Anthony Fauci and others said at point A earlier in the pandemic and point B on vaccines. I mean, we could talk about masks, we could talk about transmissibility, we could talk about all of those things and the shifts in what we've been hearing from, quote, the science, capital T, capital S. But on vaccines in particular, you really cannot blame people for having no trust in the product that is being sold to them right now, because it has changed. Like the story has changed. And again, I get it. I feel like both of us have been fairly supportive over the last couple of years of vaccines, but this is a real problem and it's not going away. You can't just mandate it away because there are so many questions remaining.
Right, and the vaccines do, reduce the likelihood of, the data does seem clear that the vaccine does reduce the severity of your infection and does and age cohorts does reduce the likelihood of dying from COVID, particularly among vulnerable populations. That's
the key, right?
Yeah, and that's that's extremely important.
But if you qualify for military participation, you are likely not in one of those categories. You're likely younger, you're likely fitter than the general population. And so you can understand why people wouldn't want a dose of the mRNA when, again, they were told a lot of different things about it that, really the benchmarks have changed on some of those metrics by the admission of folks in the industry. And, for Lloyd Austin to just say, if you want to join the American military, you have to comply with this mandate. Man, that's not going to help their recruitment one bit.
No, well, that's Lindsey Graham's whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll follow the story for sure and bring any updates on it. But I think an important one to pay attention to.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.